about who you are and your background.
I run and write a music blog called Cracking Wave that's like, well, I'm based in Newcastle. Started it about 4 years ago. Not with any intention of actually really ever being anywhere like this. And just kind of just to share music with friends, and then it just kind of took off from there, and yeah, ended up, I'm still at university, so I'm not technically working full time anywhere, but yeah.
Excellent, thank you, Josh. Adam?
My name is Adam Lewis. I am not from the Huffington Post. I run a company called the Planetary Group. We're based in Los Angeles. We're a promotion and marketing firm. We work with a lot of new artists, introducing them into the U.S. market through college radio promotion, specialist radio promotion, and a lot of blog promotion. We do events at South by Southwest Festival, CMJ Festival, Canadian Music Week, Culture Collide, all in an effort to present new artists.
Okay, excellent, thank you very much. And Peter, who is a man from the Huffington Post?
I blog for the Huffington Post occasionally. I'm a freelance journalist. I mostly write for the Irish Times, but I'm not here for them. Don't write music for them.
Why don't you write music for us?
I don't know. I was never asked. I don't know. I don't know. I guess I've been busy with other stuff. And, I just like writing, and I'm kind of my own speed. And
Okay, great. Okay, let's start with the context of two journalists, and we'll come back to that in a second. But in terms of yourself, like Peter and like Josh, like, have you got trusted filters? Have you kind of got filters that you kind of like have, I suppose, recalibrated over the years in terms of trust, in terms of kind of finding out the music? When I talked there about the trees of magic number thing, like, are there people whose kind of like opinions you trust enough that you will kind of forget about your slush pile, forget about the stuff you got in from PRs, and go and check out those particular bands?
Yeah, I mean, a question that bands always seem to ask really early on is, like, is it worthwhile getting PR? And increasingly, is it worthwhile getting online PR? And with the amount of music that gets sent to blogs every single day, there's no way that the blogs can listen to everything that's being sent to them. And so I guess my filters, I do have PR people that I do trust, and who I am more likely to listen to what they send over. So that's probably the only actual real kind of advantage for bands really, really early on in their career. Outside of that, kind of, I guess I have my own filters. Kind of have a pretty kind of active, like, SoundCloud, just keeping up with music. Bandcamp is increasingly becoming a really, really useful resource for discovering, and also then subsequently for bands for selling. Kind of, I guess other websites and other blogs as well. Tend to keep up with, and I have kind of favoured websites that I know that if I go to them, it's probably stuff that suits my taste, stuff that suits the style I'm after.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about you, Peter?
I don't tend to read that much blogs, I suppose, and my filters are kind of friends of mine in bands who I kind of trust. I kind of echo that about PR, I suppose. I think in the Irish context, I don't know if anyone working in PR here might not like me saying this, but I think it's kind of a waste of time to some extent for Irish bands to spend a lot of money on PR. You'd almost be better spending that money on a UK PR firm, and if you're good enough, that's going to filter back into Ireland. But yeah, I do get a lot of PR and press releases, and I pretty much never read them. If it happens that I've kind of heard of the band anyway, or I like the band, I might click through. But generally, I wouldn't tend to read them as much. Yeah, I guess it's a lot of for me is friends, and I like I suppose like one of the things I write about for Huffington Post is I've only written about Irish music. It's not that I only like Irish music. I just think it's maybe it's a good way of talking about Irish music to an international audience and using Huffington Post for that, because there's so many good bands here. So I would go to a lot of music festivals, and I suppose like stuff like Hard Working Class Heroes would be a major one for me, although I'll actually miss most of this weekend or something else on. But like Knock and Stockin as well. I love Knock and Stockin, and I quite like the smaller festivals like Castlepalooza or Independence for finding bands. So I suppose if you are a band and you're looking for some sort of publicity around that, and you're playing a festival, I guess you try and create that's the time maybe to be contacting journalists as well, and letting them know you're playing here, and But how you contact journalists is also very important as well. So I don't want to wrap it on too much, but we can come back to that maybe.
Okay, no, that's kind of a good wrap up from the two of you in terms of like where you find out about music. From your point of view, Adam, you know, and Planetary, you know, have you noticed that you're now working in a very kind of splintered marketplace in terms of getting the key people you need to, you know, talk about your bands, talk about your clients, that like getting their attention?
Yeah, I mean, definitely on the blog side, it's very hard to get their attention because I mean, you're dealing with people that are generally writing as a hobby and they're not doing it full time, and they may have a day job, and so, or they're in universities, so they only have a few hours of time and they just can't get through it all. So yeah, so it is harder to reach them. I mean, on the radio side, that we do a lot of radio as well, and on that side we are able to reach them because most of them are, you know, you can call them and get them on the phone. As bloggers, you can't call as much. They really just want to be emailed. The radio folks all have office hours, and you can reach them, and you can twist their arms and talk to them, and you really build a relationship with them because you're talking to them every week, 50 weeks out of the year, and we've been doing that for 20 years.
Right.
You know, but the bloggers is definitely much more of a finesse thing, and yeah, it's definitely more splintered for sure.
Did you find it strange that neither Josh or Peter made any reference to radio when they were talking?
I mean, they're in the blog world. They're writers. Why would they?
Okay, but like,
I mean, radio still in the U.S. is still number one. You know, it's not sexy anymore. You know, it's not sexy like the blogs are, but it's still the number. In terms of being able to make a record a hit, it's still the number one hit. You know, so the blogs are great. There's limitations in both, and in order to have a successful campaign, you've got to have a bit of both.
right. So, like, I mean, was leaving out radio then, was that like, I mean, just accidental? Or was it a case of neither of you, in terms of two views, neither of you kind of like rely on radio to any great extent to find bands?
Not especially. I don't really have time to listen to radio that much.
But I will say, you don't really have radio. You don't have Discovery Radio over here. You don't have a network of college and non-commercial radio over here. So you're not going to do a lot of discovery on a commercial radio station. Right? I mean, unless you're talking about a specialist show.
So, well, I suppose it kind of like means, like, you know, aside from, I suppose I'm looking at two views, like, you know, Josh and Peter, I kind of go like, okay, when you find out about bands, you know, like, is radio on your radar, but not just like in local radio, because I mean, thanks to the internet, like, I can listen to KCRW, I can kind of like listen to any of those shows, and it's kind of weird because many times they're my first call. Kind of find out bands. So I'm just interested in terms of two views. Are there shows you've identified both either in stations, in your case Irish stations, in your case UK stations, or elsewhere, or is radio way down the list?
I think increasingly with the way PRs work, they try to build a foundation on blogs nowadays. It depends on the campaign, but we've seen it a lot in recent years with. Well, London Grammar is probably one of the best examples where they built this really, really good foundation before they even considered going to radio. Lord was exactly the same, built this colossal online following, which was never going to break her as a mainstream artist. It was always going to be the radio that was going to break her. Same with London Grammar. And so, therefore, it sounds a bit arrogant saying I think I find myself ahead of the curve with radio, but I guess, yeah, I like to be able to control my own music consumption, and I don't feel I get that anywhere near as much with radio. Yeah, and just an issue of time as well.
Yeah,
don't have time to put on an hour-long radio show and listen to it. I would much prefer to put on an hour of music that I've been recommended through blogs or through people, through bands. I kind of tend to find that's a much more worthwhile use of time.
Oh, if you Peter,
like the vast majority of my work is like features and news and not like the stuff I'm paid for, you know.
Yeah.
So I listen to a lot of talk radio during the day. So I guess in my mind I couldn't listen to it anymore. I would occasionally like listen to there's a world music show very occasionally I listen to on Lyric. But generally it's kind of I'd be kind of the same as Josh. I don't want to necessarily tune into a radio show. And I think for bands, like if you're a small band in a huge marketplace, and it is really helpful to, don't necessarily think that you have to start with like the big bloggers like Northern Line. Like there's maybe contact a smaller blog, even if they say something nice about you, you can kind of use that, build it up. That's kind of your foundation is bloggers, and I say that in kind of a way that maybe we're kind of at the lower end of importance, because it is actually more important ultimately that you're getting radio play. But if you're approaching a big name in music or a big DJ, and he's got tons of information already about and tons of stuff on other bands, it kind of does help if you've built that bit of buzz around yourself, and bloggers can help you to do that. And then obviously you go to kind of to like paid journalists like Jim,
Bloggers get paid, don't they?
I would say that what they're both saying makes sense, especially in the UK and Ireland. But I would say it's very different in the US in that you have 400, 500 outlets across the US that are playing the newest music and unknown stuff, and every type of music. It could be metal, it could be hip hop, it could be klezmer music, it could be punk polka, women in folk music, every type of show imaginable. And it's a great place to discover new music, and there's a lot of discovery still going on. And KCRW in LA is obviously one of the best, and every major city in the US has a station like that. Yeah. And I travel all over the world at these festivals looking for bands and whatnot, and every single festival I go to, about 50% of the bands will bring up KCRW. Yeah. It doesn't matter where I am in the world. And they listen to it online. They have a humongous online listening audience. So you still really can get a lot of early support at radio. And I think for some bands, you're going to get a lot more support at radio than they are ever from the blogs. Because the blogs won't pay attention because they don't know who they are until they know who they are, until you reach that tipping point.
I think what a lot of people forget as well sometimes is that the tastes of people at those radio stations we're talking about are ultra good. I mean, like there's a thing on NPR.org at the moment. They're putting on the 10 most played tracks on NPR stations during the month of September. And it's serious. Like, I mean, you've got Aphex Twin, you've got like some techno, you've got his Golden Messenger. It's a really, really eclectic and really, really good thing. So it's like, I mean, you're very, very lucky in that kind of way because those stations are making a point to actually go out and discover this music and breaking it.
And every DJ at KCRW is also a music supervisor. You get a play on KCRW, you get a good shot of getting a TV show or a movie. And we have clients all the time that get played on the radio in LA and end up getting into a film or TV. But yeah, I mean, I think that's where the mix comes in. And sometimes I'll advise a lot of our clients not to do a blog campaign. Just do radio, build the story. Then when you're coming into the market, if you're coming like this, especially with overseas acts, when you come into the market, then go after the blogs and you can start pulling after promotion based on their shows. Yeah. The blogs also don't work unless you've got a lot of content. If you've only got your record, that's not enough. You might get a blip, but you then need videos. You then need exclusive content, B-sides, live tracks, videos, live dates, all that stuff to be able to really, get anywhere and sustain anywhere.
Yeah. This is kind of a question to all three of you. Have any of you come across quite any inventive ways bands have to get attention? I don't mean kind of sending you lollipops or 5 pound notes or like how crazy the post, but in terms of getting your attention, in terms of or is it a case basically of you're seeking stuff out based on recommendations, you're seeking the stuff out based on your personal presets?
I think there's quite often bands want to have a talking point when they start, especially when they launch, which is becoming more and more. Even people making music in their bedrooms still think about the launch of their project when they put the first song online. And I found that really interesting. There was a group from California a few months back, and their launch was they put 2 songs online, and they put a broken hard drive online and sold it for $1,000. And they said, this has got every song we've ever made on, and we want to sell it to someone. And someone bought it. And that was their first ever songs, and they're including about 40 songs on the hard drive. And that was a great tagline. It had people talking and people saying, band sells busted hard drive. And that was a really, really interesting way of launching. It's probably better than that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point Josh is making, is to actually have a story, because if you're just writing about a band, and it's actually sometimes kind of difficult to describe music and write about music. And actually, if you're approaching a journalist or a blogger and you've got a story you can tell, whether that's you've dropped out of medical college to become a journalist, or your parents were to become a musician, or your parents were musicians, or there's some kind of weird narrative that you can sell, because ultimately journalists have to tell a story, and same journalists in particular, bloggers as well. You've got to tell a story, and if you can kind of present them with that, you want to give I suppose, as much as you can. Like, don't be like, we're great, here's a link to us, you know. Like, journalists and bloggers as well, they need images. Like, you don't necessarily have to have a PR company to do this, you can do it yourself, particularly in an Irish context, because it's small. I think we forget sometimes what a small country we are, like, so you can access the right people, you know, just find the journalists or the DJs or the radio shows that are interested in the type of music that you have, put together a good story, make sure you've got images, it helps with a video, links to your Bandcamp, links to SoundCloud, and basically make the job as easy as you possibly can for the lazy journalist or the lazy blogger. They might be struggling for content at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you've given them this great video, you've got all these images, you've got a really interesting story. They're a journalist that kind of likes your style of music anyway, so yeah.
Well, I mean, the chances are, if they are lazy and also short of time, that if you've written a good bio and press release, they may very well just cut and paste or take liberally from that, you know, especially in the blog world. You know, you both mentioned a story, and that's obviously what we're all looking for in terms of having something to tell. But unfortunately, when you're dealing with new bands, there's often not much of a story other than a great record, right? And so that's always the hard part, and that's the hard part for doing press. And so that's why I'll often say, hey, let's just focus on radio right now and build a story there, because at the end of the day, all they care about is a good record. They like the record, they play it. They don't ask what label it's on, what's the story, you know, where are they playing, you know, do you have a video, all that stuff. They don't care. If it's a good record, they play it. So you can start building that story by getting a bunch of airplay. Then you can start playing some of those markets where you have airplay, and you can start building it that way. And that's a really good tried and true market in the U.S.
Okay, so like, I mean, Josh, you mentioned earlier on about, like, I mean, diving into the list of SoundCloud and Bandcamp to discover stuff. Like, what grabs your attention? Because obviously there's no story at that stage. So, I mean, are you after a certain kind of music for cracking the road? Is there a certain kind of acts to kind of, like, I mean, you're very much kind of looking to champion?
I think someone touched on it earlier about how it can be difficult to break certain acts online. There is, at the moment, there's very much a hype machine sound. There's a blog sound. It is moving slightly away from that, but I think for a long time it's been very much electronic based. I think a part of that has been because a lot of these people making the music are the same ones who are surfing the web, and so they like to listen to music that sounds like the music they're making. But now online is becoming even more important for breaking bands, breaking guitar bands, breaking, it's an awful word to use, an awful kind of phrase to use, but breaking rock bands. Starting to see more kind of sites covering that sort of music. Personally, I don't know, things that grab my attention, images is a massive one. I probably listen to 50 or 60 new bands a day sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes I'll listen to 30 seconds, sometimes I'll listen to 10 seconds. But equally, sometimes I'll open a tab with a song in it and I'll look at the image and I'll think, actually, I haven't even got time to listen to that. And I'll just close it down straight away. There's other parts, like names as well, is one that's been kind of, over the past few years, is really... It's
amazing. It's amazing because there's probably musicians out there kind of going like, I always knew that if you had a shit name, they wouldn't listen to you. I always knew if you had a good image, they'd listen to you. It's amazing for you to kind of explain that actually that is how we work, that is how we process.
Yeah, I mean, there was the kind of trend a couple of years back with bands putting spaces in their names, and then there was the trend with people using symbols instead of letters, and just kind of things like that are actually quite annoying, but help you stand out from the crowd a little bit. And yeah, that's the kind of thing that...
Well, they're more, you can Google easier, right? That's why they do it.
Yeah.
The symbols.
So, like in terms of kind of like deciding, you know, Josh and Peter about writing about a new band and covering that new band, like what the, like, I mean, like obviously you hear the music kind of grabs you. What else are you looking for then? Like, I mean, what else do you need at that particular stage? Because I know in Crack of the Road, like there's times you kind of picked up and stuff so early that there's no story, and like, I mean, you're part of that kind of early kind of story. So like, you know, I suppose like how, like, do you think about like how early is the band? Do you ever think about like, is this too early for a band in terms of developing them? If you record label, you would think about in those terms. But are you kind of like, well, fuck that, that's not my band?
Yeah, sometimes if I hear something that I think's got a lot of potential, or is actually already really impressive, but doesn't have any following behind it, doesn't have any story, no one else has written about it, I will sometimes just send the band an email instead and try and sort them out with a good manager, try and sort them out with a good producer, something like that instead, because sometimes it is too early. And online can be quite unforgiving as well. It's kind of been a trend in recent years again that you see a lot of musicians re-emerging under new names. So they put music online and then it doesn't, somewhere along the line it goes wrong, and so they change their name and they come back. I think the most recent example probably being the 1975, who have been a band for 10 years under different guises with pretty much the same songs, and they reinvented several times. And they've been quite lucky in a way that radio loved them. And online they didn't get the same kind of support online. But you see so many bands reinventing, and it is you can't wipe the internet. You can't take any mentions of your previous name off the internet.
Talk a little bit about one story that I can't remember if you were involved in. Was it Boots or something like that, where like there was a whole situation where you discovered the past very easily in a couple of clicks, and like next thing you've Scott Rogers or someone from the Magic probably on your back. Yeah, he was. It was on, for the last Beyonce album. There was a guy credited just as Boots, and no one knew who he was. He wrote 4 tracks, produced about, I think he said about 85% of the album. It just came out of nowhere. And then, so I just kind of thought to myself, I'll just do a little bit of digging. And I think BuzzFeed did an article about who is Boots, but they couldn't find out who it was. And so I thought I'll just have a little look around, and it took about 30 seconds. I think it was something, he'd done quite well at kind of hiding his identity, but I think he linked it somewhere on a really old photo on his Instagram. He put his real name or something like that. So I just did a quick search and found out he'd been in bands around New York for 10 years. And had got his lucky break with, he was a tour manager for an act called Gambles. Yeah. And Gambles works with Beyonce's company that handles her social media. So he sent a song over to Beyonce, and she was like, oh, I love this, let's get to the studio. Yeah. And that was, I think, I got a few angry emails from, it's Def Jam, isn't it? Is he signed to Def Jam, I think? No. It's Def Jam, and also, I can't remember the name of the Magic Company, it's one of the big ones anyway. Yeah, so I got a few emails being like, but see, this also kind of proved another point as well about, like, one thing that if you're diving into new music and any kind, all 3 of you have experienced this, you come across what we call the mystery act. The act who kind of like, all they have is kind of like, they might be the first name, there won't be anything else. And like, that sort of kind of like, I suppose, that attention to detail, we've had it here in Ireland with various acts as well, that it's they're trying to disguise their identity. What's your take on that? Like, does it annoy you? Yeah, there's an electronic actor's name I've completely forgotten now. He released a great EP who kind of totally disguised his identity, but everyone knew who he was anyway, So like, that kind of like that mysterious thing. Does that bug you? Is that something you kind of like look into?
No, if the music's good enough. But yeah, I suppose if again you've got a bit more of a story there, like I do personally. I guess it's a bit easier for me. I'm mostly just writing about Irish music with the smaller markers. Personally, if there's a bit of a story there, yeah, great. But if the music's good enough, you might just, I have emailed a couple of bands and said, can you give me more information about you guys? I think you're really good, and it wouldn't bother me as such.
Okay. Could care less. I don't care if it's a good record. It's a good record. I don't care. If they're lame, they're lame. You can't cover up lame, right? The reality is, every famous band has been in 9. Musician has been in 9 bands before them. It is what it is. Bands break up. They evolve. They move around. Who cares? If the music's good, it's good. It doesn't matter.
I think sometimes people, especially with blogs, the whole like identity-less thing, it's kind of been, the past few years has really come to the scene, and it's, I don't know, it can actually be off-putting in a way, especially if it can come across as a bit contrived sometimes, and especially if there is a history there being in other bands, which is when it tends to happen, when someone doesn't want people to know what their past was. Yeah. And especially if you're emailing blogs who are doing it, who are writing for free, who are just doing it as a passion, and it can just look a little bit like you're trying to kind of pull the wool over their eyes a little bit. And they don't, I know people who don't take very kindly to that, who think actually, if I'm going to write about their music, they can at least be honest. They can at least include a name, and they can at least, put some information out there. Personally, I don't really mind. It's a promotional method. Jungle did it pretty successfully for 8 months or so, and then...
The thing is, though, it's nothing new. It's just new because the internet makes it transparent. All these bands were doing this 30 years ago, 40 years ago. They've all been doing it. It's not a new thing. It's just out there. People can find it now. But you know, people have always been evolving and changing bands and changing. You know, they do one project and it fails, and then the guy goes, let's go in a different direction.
Okay. Final question for me before we open up to the floor. Thank you so much for your time today and attention, also for putting up with our technical problems as well. Final question. Maybe could you talk a little bit about some acts you've come across in the last, say, 6 to 12 months? How you've come across them, acts you actually really like, new acts that you've come across, how you came across them, and why you decided to kind of go with them. Starting with Josh.
I think I kind of far prefer to see potential in an act than to see a polished, finished song. And more when acts put their first song online and kind of launch products, especially if there's label funding or if there's publishing funding behind it. That's kind of how it tends to happen. The kind of the London Grammar route where they had an album finished before they had a note of music online. And then they kind of launched it, kind of tried to make it look organic. And I kind of prefer to see, I quite like to see a band's growth. So I like to see, I think Circle Waves was quite a good one recently. They had a bunch of rough demos online, and they haven't tried to kind of kick them under the carpet. They've left them online. And it's been really interesting watching their development as a band, going from kind of demos recorded in the lead singer's bedroom to songs recorded in professional recording studios. It's I'm trying to think off the top of my head which other artists. There's a lot of kind of very much unheard stuff. Australia's got a fantastic music scene at the moment.
Amazing, yeah. Actually, you I think it was Crackney Road. That's the first place I read about Luca.
Luca, yeah, that's one. I think she's 16 years old, and I really like what she's doing. Not just her music, but the whole. She's very ambitious. So the videos are not amazing. The photos are not amazing. The music, the production's kind of iffy, but she's showing a lot of ambition, especially for someone so young. Not to be patronising, but she's really, really ambitious, and that's so positive to see in an artist.
Adam, what about you?
You know, by the time an artist is, in a lot of cases, by the time they're online and have much of an online footprint, it's probably, in a lot of cases, too late for me in terms of getting involved with them. If they're good, if they're really amazing and got something going on, right? So a lot of my discoveries just come from my network of doing this for 20 plus years, right? So whether it's a manager or a friend of a friend or whatever, but I just look back to, one of my biggest success probably in the last 18 months, or one of them anyway, was Courtney Barnett, who's really kind of taken the world by storm in the indie rock world. And I went to a show 2.5 years ago, and there were 5 people there, and no one knew who she was. And it's still kind of, for me, it's still kind of the old school way of a business associate or a friend just kind of telling me about a project they're working on, and word of mouth, and especially, it's funny you bring up Australia, because all my successes in the last year and a half have come out of Australia. It's a really hot area. Yeah, and on all types of music. So there's the electronic stuff, even on the pop side of things, on the hip hop side of things. It's indie rock. Every type of music is happening in Australia now. It's pretty interesting.
Peter?
One of the bands I liked in the past few months is a band. People have different reactions to this band, Melty Brains. And I just kind of stumbled across them at Knock and Sock, and I thought they were great, put on a really good show. The second half of the show was better than the first still. But if you look at what they're doing, they're actually doing something that Del Rentos have done really effectively as well. You can kind of see that and something we haven't spoken much about here, they're slightly bypassing, they're not completely bypassing bloggers and DJs and journalists and so on, but actually they're communicating directly with their audience and using social media very effectively to do that. And they've got a good image, they've got, they look good, their sound is interesting, and they're communicating directly, and bands can do that. You've got the power of social media to do that, and I think that's really important to do as well. Del Rento's done really, really well, and I think a large part of their success is also they're fantastic, but a large part of it is that directly communicating with their audience, and your audience will expect that. So don't focus too much on journalists and bloggers and DJs and PR people and so on, like, go direct to your audience as well. And, yeah.
Yeah, actually, just on kind of, and Peter's point, like if I was in a band starting off, I'd totally ignore journalists, bloggers, PRs, DJs, all those people. Just do it because we'll find you eventually. I mean, the thing is, the minute any band sticks their music up online, they're going to be found by Josh. They're going to be found by Peter. They're going to be found by Alan, from me, or anyone else. Because the thing that a lot of people kind of forget about now is that anyone who's online, anyone who's writing online or commenting online, they're always looking for new music, and they will find you. And it's just one of those things. Once you're online, you can't hide. So, any questions from the audience?
It's sort of a two-part question and more of an anecdote. You mentioned a little bit about there was a bit of a trend of anonymity. One of our artists, Unknown, put up, about 2 years ago, put up a series of tracks online, and they were just unknown, and they were numbered 1 to 4. It exploded, it went massive. It was available on Juno on vinyl, and it completely sold out. And the reason for that was because the narrative of it was the anonymity. People were saying, is this Burial, is this Quartet, is this, there was all these names being thrown around, and eventually John Talbot licensed one of the tracks on his DJ Kicks compilation. And that became the narrative, the whole fact that nobody knew who this was, but the music was really, really good. The other part of my question is, you mentioned at the start how narrative and a story and content, images and things like that are really important. Do you think one is more important than the other, or are they all just sort of tied in together?
Is which more important than the other? Sorry.
Is it image, is it a narrative, or is it the music?
It completely depends on the medium that you're targeting. Completely depends on the medium. Obviously, if it's radio, it's not, you don't necessarily need as much with images, but if it's press or blogger, yeah,
great image goes a long way.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's the music, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I'd say, you're talking about the unknown and the anonymous. I mean, that's great. It happened 40 years ago too, when there was a band called, I think they were called, I forget how to pronounce it. It was called like Clatau or something like that, and they were signed to a major label, but they had no credits. No one knew who they were. They came out of nowhere. Record went gold because everyone thought it was the Beatles.
Exactly.
Same thing. It's the same story, right? There's nothing new.
It's
just different media, right?
A funny thing happened. Ellie Goulding actually tweeted it out, and Ben Pierce, he retweeted it as well. Ellie Goulding she said something like, "Oh, I wish I knew who this was, sad fetus," and it was just the most hilarious thing in the world because it was just like, that's just Chris, right? He reads his bedroom on his shitty laptop.
Next question.
I just have a question in relation to, I suppose, artists send down their material to bloggers or press. Is there any point that, okay, say you're not getting any feedback, is there any way, or what would be a respectful way of, say, following up on journalists or press people? Is there a respectful way, or is it just, should you just take that as a no?
Joe, who wants to start?
I think the best way to approach contacting blogs, and blogs are easier to contact than big kind of business-run websites. The best way of contacting blogs is to show that you really understand the ethos behind why that person writes a music blog, and that's something that I don't see very much. I don't see people kind of getting in touch, understanding that I don't write a music blog because I want to make any money out of it. I write a music blog because I enjoy sharing music, in the same way that people create music, first and foremost because they enjoy creating music and they enjoy performing music. And if you can show that you really appreciate and understand that, you're immediately starting to connect with them, and therefore they're far more likely to listen to the music. In terms of following up, I think you have to kind of appreciate sometimes that some of these websites will I think the email that's on my website receives about 400 emails a day, and there's no way I'm going to be able to go through every single one, checking them all. And sometimes, if you can follow up like 3 or 4 days later, they might just kind of have time then to check it out. I think so much of it just comes down to time. Blogs, the vast majority of them, as they aren't businesses, don't run on a schedule. And that's something that a lot of I'm still amazed at the number of online PRs who don't understand that, who send me emails and say, can we get this up at 11 o'clock and can we get this song up at 11 o'clock in the morning? Can we get this posted at 3 in the afternoon? And it's kind of like, well, I don't know if I'm going to be at my computer then, I might be in university then. And I think bands understand that even more than online PRs.
Have you had experience with that yourself, is it?
Well, yeah, but I suppose like I'm from Galway, I suppose we kind of isolated, I suppose, maybe from you know, there's a good like a lot of really good bands from Galway, but like we'll say like the internet is a great resource for us just for getting our music out there because it's not you know, all the media is based in Dublin and Wales, and that's great, but like just in terms of I suppose, yeah, the internet's a great tool for people that are living in say rural areas or more kind of but yeah, like that, like, and sometimes I'm looking back and saying, geez, did I phrase that email wrong, or was that?
And are you targeting particular journalists, particular bloggers, people who would actually be interested in your type of music? Are you giving them some unique and special? Bear in mind, bloggers work to very different schedules than journalists. Journalists get a huge amount of emails as well. I do think a follow-up is always worthwhile,
Right,
but I would suggest a bit longer than a few days, a week at least.
Yeah, I'd be very wary about what I call the hassle emails. Like I checked my phone just for this panel, and I checked it previously at 1:30. So 123 emails since 1:30. So that's just like, you know, that's just another for just bands, PRs, whatever. And like when I finish, I'll just go out, delete. You know, and this is someone I know. And it's like, if someone's in a band in Ireland, and like I've said this every single panel doing Irish music, and the person who's responsible for this is in the room. It's not because she's in the room. If you're an Irish band, there's a resource called Breaking Tunes. This is a resource containing thousands of Irish bands. When I go out every week looking for new music, the first place, when it comes to Irish music, I go to Breaking Tunes. And like I find so many bands. And what I find hilarious is that I remember hearing counts this happening in 2013. 8 bands I wrote about in the Irish Times emailing me afterwards, going, "Look, really appreciate you writing about us. Where did you find out about us?" And they were thinking, maybe someone told them about it. Maybe you were at a gig. No, Breaking Tunes. I mean, it's like it's one of the easiest places to go. It's a simple interface. It's not bloody Facebook. It's perfect. It's just perfect. So like like I said earlier on, you're already in play when you're online. Unless you're sending a CD that's not available anywhere else. If there's an Irish music journalist who is seriously interested in finding out music, and it's not Mayhem, they'll probably already know about you, and they probably already heard you. And like Josh said earlier on, about listening to music for 30 seconds or 10 seconds, they've heard it and they've made a decision already. So it's like the follow-up emails. Like I'm gonna probably try an experiment, which is like have a kind of auto response to like try and kind of filter the right emails. Like thanks very much for your music, really appreciate it. Just for your information, you know, we receive hundreds of bands every single week. If we like it, we'll write about you. If we don't like it, we won't. Simple as that. I know that sounds very blunt, and you're talking about like going back to the very first panel, say you're talking about art or whatever. But the thing we have least of, all of us, you, everyone in this room, everyone involved in the music industry is time. You know. It's a very down thing to say, isn't it? One happy question.
Yeah.
One happy question. It's not a happy question.
For Adam there, I was wondering, so you're talking about college radio in the US, and it's a great way for new artists to break into the market over there. And would you recommend like young upcoming Irish bands to send material from Ireland, like when they play stuff from around the world? Most
Yeah.
of the people are touring there already.
Touring doesn't play into it. You know, touring really plays into press and the blogs, but for radio, if they like the record, they'll play it. That's all they care about. And the fact that you're from Ireland is actually a plus in terms of marketing, because everyone's a little bit Irish in the US. But in all seriousness, all over the world is, you know, they're looking for. The US used to be so US. They let some British brands in once in a while. You know, they let Men at Work in once and In Excess, and that's about it, right? And maybe a Canadian band once in a while, but we consider that American. So, you know, it's basically, you know, we were so American. But now, you know, we've got bands from Iceland having hits. You know, we had a crazy guy from South Korea have a hit. You know what I mean? You got people from all over the place, you know, releasing records now. I mean, every label in America right now has a band from Australia. On their label. 5 years ago, none. You know, so people are really open to it, and college radio is the most open to it. They don't care where you're from. You know, no one says, "Oh, I'm not going to play this song. It's from Ireland." You know, like when we're pitching a band to radio, we're like, hey, this is a really cool band. They're completely unheard of. They're from Ireland. Check it out. I'm like, all right, cool. I want to check that out. And that's all it is at College Radio. It's about the music, and that's what's great about it. So yes, I mean, I think a lot of bands, especially from Europe, are very scared and intimidated to go to the U.S., to send their music to the U.S., and to, you know, because it's, where do we start? It's so big, you know. It's not that way with College Radio. College Radio is really supportive and waiting for you with open arms for cool music. Now, that said, it's hard because there's 300 plus of them, you know, so for you to try to do it on your own is tough. You know, it's a lot of work. So you can try to pick a few, or you can hire a college radio company to do it for you, because I'm all for do it yourself, but to try to follow up with 300 radio stations from afar is really hard. And for you to mail 300 CDs from Ireland is really expensive. You've got to do physical with radio still. Yeah. A digital file will not, or a link or download, it will not cut through the clutter at radio. They're getting way too many records, and their equipment's antiquated. They don't, and they play so much music. You know, commercial radio station can play digital files because they're only playing 50 songs in rotation, right? A college radio station is playing, you know, 5,000 songs in each format, you know, and they just don't have, there's not a server big enough for these stations, for the amount of music they play and all the different DJs they have. You know, they might have 100 different DJs at these stations. So the hard copy really is important. But definitely, you know, most European bands will wait too long to attack the US. They'll wait until they get accepted into playing South by Southwest or CMJ, the two festivals in the US. CMJ is generally the one you should play first. That's the more entry-level one. But most bands will wait too long to do something in the US until they get accepted to one of those events, and then I'll get the phone call. We're coming to America in a month. What can you do for me? Nothing. Nothing at all, really. The bands that we've had the most success with are bands that we've done 2 or 3 small campaigns for. Maybe you had an EP, a single, then an album. You do those campaigns first, and you create a demand, and then you come over, and then you're showcasing at CMJ, you know, with the First Music Contact and what Angela does. With, you know, they have a showcase there. Then you're playing for people that actually know who you are. You know, for your fans, and then that can be a really meaningful first exposure into the U.S., and then you can start building your team. You know, because at CMJ, which is based in New York, that's where the agents are. You can hopefully find an agent, maybe you can find the publisher. Start building your team in the U.S. But I'm a big fan of using college radio to kind of start that ball rolling in the U.S., because it's the one thing that's quite obtainable, you know, for an overseas band. And probably 40% of our clients are overseas acts these days. Just introducing them into the U.S. market.
Great.
We've run out of time, so the memo from next year will be that the panels should be slightly longer, and just in terms of turnaround, and also that we won't be using microphones. So please, a big round of applause, please, for Josh.